Okay. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Buddhaloka Centre, BSV, this sunny Sunday morning. It's really nice, really encouraging that you've all come to the Buddhaloka Centre this morning. You've given up going to some sort of nice cafe to have a brunch and a coffee and all these kinds. I noticed people in Melbourne really like to do that. They go to cafes and drink coffee and eat toast and things. So it's very nice that you've all given that up and come to practice the Dhamma and practice some meditation, do some chanting. And so what the mere fact that you've actually come here this morning and that you've given up something like going to a nice cafe on a sunny morning, it shows that you see the benefit in something like this. You see the benefit in doing some kind of meditation or doing some kind of Dhamma practice. You see that there's some kind of benefit over and above doing these things that are enjoyable to do with your life. And so we've most likely come to that conclusion because we've heard a lot about meditation and Dhamma practice, and we think, okay, this is something that's very good. This is going to bring happiness and joy and clarity and understanding and wisdom and bliss and enlightenment and all these kinds of great things. We've all heard the really good things about meditation, and that's why most of us do it. But what I actually wanted to talk about this morning is maybe something a little counterintuitive to that, is the suffering that can come about through meditation, or the problems that you can go through with meditation. Because, one of the central teachings of Buddhism that the Buddha taught was that, everything in our existence is suffering in some way. And actually, meditation, it's no exception from that. Meditation practice can be very difficult. So this morning I'll put on my Buddhist monk grump hat and start to wave a flag of pessimism around a little bit. So, but the only reason I wanted to talk about this is not to deny that actually meditation does have these good factors to it, and it really does. If you do it, it does bring a lot of great benefit. But just to know that for anybody that hasn't done much meditation, that it is very normal to go through suffering and go to deal with problems when you're actually practicing meditation. So what I'll outline this morning is, firstly, what do I mean when I say suffering from meditation or problems from meditation? Then I'll go over about some of the reasons why we actually experience suffering when we do a practice like meditation, and then I'll try to outline some, just some pointers and some ideas of maybe how to overcome that in some way, and then finally why I think it's really important for us to continue with a practice like meditation, even though it might actually cause us some suffering and frustration and all these kinds of things. So, firstly, what do I actually mean when I say the suffering from meditation and Dhamma practice? Well, anyone that has meditated and is there anybody here that actually hasn't meditated or done anything like that before? Well, that's good. I'm not going to scare anybody off then, so that's good. So usually what we notice as when we take up some kind of meditation practice, and this happens from the very first time that you do it, you realize actually controlling your mind is very, very hard. This is not something that's easy to do. You take up a practice like the breath, and just throughout this talk I'll just use the breath as the example of what I'm going to talk about. It's just easier than having multiple examples. But say, for example, we take up the breath, we get told we need to pay attention to the breath, and we think, okay, I need to put my attention here and stay here, and this is what's going to make me calm. This is what's going to make me peaceful and happy. And inevitably, what happens is after a few moments, the mind wanders off. We get lost in thought for a little while. And then after a few moments, we realize, I'm meant to be meditating. I need to come back to the breath. And so you come back to the breath and you think, I'm really going to stay on this thing this time. I'm not going to let it go. And obviously what happens again is that happens again, and you get lost in thought, and you realize, oh, I'm meant to be meditating. And what gradually happens through that process is you start to, at that point where you realize you've wandered off, you start to maybe get critical, or you start to get judgmental of yourself and think, oh, why can't I do this? Why isn't the mind settling down? That's the point where most of us think that we start to have doubts about the practice. Is this meditation object that we're doing, is this the right thing? Is this the right object I should be using? Or am I meditating in the right way? Am I doing this the right way? Why aren't I actually practicing? Why isn't my mind becoming calm? And that can happen over a longer period of time. And what can eventually start to happen with people is that this very natural process that happens, you might start to get discouraged because of it. Start to think, well, actually, I'm not cut out for meditation. My mind's just too busy. I can't do this. This isn't something that I'm good at, so I'm not going to do it. So this is something that just very naturally happens through the course of having some kind of meditation practice. And so that can bring up a lot of frustration, doubt, as I said, judgmental, critical attitudes in the mind. And so you can start to have those negative reactions to the mind state and wanting the mind to be a particular way when it's not that way. We take up a meditation practice because we want to feel better about ourselves. We want these good things, but it just doesn't seem to be working, doesn't seem to be happening. So there's that level of frustration, but then there's also all the other aspects in meditation that can bring up frustration. And there's obviously you sit for a while, there's the pain in the legs, the pain in the body, there's the boredom from doing it for a very long period of time, there's the self-doubt there of, is my meditation actually, is it actually progressing in any way? There's the 10,000 other things that you think that would be better to be doing. I could be, out at a cafe and it's sunny day. I should be out doing something like that. There's the critical aspect of the mind. There's just wanting a little bit of peace and not getting it, and having to go through this beratement from your own mind. So there's all these different aspects where you can come into a lot of challenges in meditation. And so how do I know this? Well, like anybody that's had a meditation practice, I've been through them all. I've had to deal with all these things, and this became really obvious when I first started to practice meditation. This was before I was ordained, obviously, and I thought, meditation, this is good. I'm going to go do a meditation retreat. I'm going to do one of those 10-day silent retreats. This is going to be great. I'm going to feel better about myself. This is exactly what I'm looking for in life. I'm going to go there. I'm going to be peaceful. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to understand something more about my life. This is really going to change me and change who I am, and this is going to be perfect for me. Obviously, I got there the first day, and first sit, yeah, I'm nailing this. I know exactly what I'm doing. My mind's calm. It's good. It's peaceful. By the end of the night, kind of thing, it's not so great anymore. I can be mindful for 45 minutes out of this hour sit, so that's it's still okay. But by the second day and the third day, you're doing an hour sit, and it's dropped down to maybe you're mindful for about 5 minutes, and then by the third day, you sit for an hour, and you might be mindful for 15 seconds out of the hour. The rest of the time is just this yammering in the mind. And so by the third day, I was furious. I was so angry. I thought I was about to blow. I got so angry doing this that because the meditation center it backed onto a national park. I went out the back of the meditation center near the forest, and I started to walk around like I was kicking trees, and I was like sitting on the ground and pounding my fists in the ground, and I got so angry, and I got so felt like I was going to blow, that I actually ran into the forest. ran into the middle of a national park. And mind you, I didn't like follow a path. I just like ran into the forest. And I like went for about 3 hours. And this time it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I walked till about 4 before I decided to come back, and it was starting to get a little bit dark, all these kinds of things. So I had to make my way back. It obviously turned out okay. I got back and everything was fine. So, what this shows is that there is a lot of frustration that can come about through a meditation practice, and so why do we have this kind of frustration? Why do you have this suffering when you actually meditate? So if you think of that example of me like running away, what was I actually doing there? Me getting frustrated, me getting angry, what was that because of? That was simply because I couldn't control my own mind. There was nothing else that was wrong in the world. I couldn't control my own mind. I wanted my experience to be something different than what it was. I wanted peace, calm, clarity inside. But all I was getting was anger, frustration, agitation. I wanted my experience of the world to be something different than what it was. And it got to the point where I literally tried to run away from myself. My problem's up in my own mind, but I'm literally trying to run away from that. So that's usually what happens when you have some kind of problem from meditation or some kind of suffering, is that you're experiencing something that's not good, that's suffering, and you don't want it to be that way. You want it to be a different way. You're not actually accepting reality for what it is, because we think meditation's about something about changing who we are. We think meditation's about actually feeling better and making ourselves better and improving ourselves, and it is all these things. But at that moment, we think we should be a different way, instead of actually realizing, well, this is the way reality is right at this point in time. We're always trying to change this. We're always trying to think that who we are and what we're experiencing, it should be a different way. It has to be a different way. And so we think meditation is about that. But I'd argue that actually one of the main things you're trying to do in meditation is just understand the present moment for what it is and to be able to let it go. Whether the present moment's good or whether the present moment's bad, you're trying to train just to actually let this present moment go. And what do I mean by that? It's, well, if you think, what actually is the present moment? What it is, it's a short series of time spaces, and that's all we ever really have. The time space we experience now shifts into the past. So the present moment is every new moment. So what we're trying to do in meditation is actually to begin again anew at every new moment. At every moment that passes by, we start again, we re-establish ourselves again. People get confused when you say, how do you let go? How do you let go of your attachments? I don't get this kind of, letting go of seeing things arise and pass in the present and letting them go. Well, if you think of some kind of negative mind state that arises, you get angry. The thought arises in the present that, I can't believe he said that to me. That arises there in the present. But then what happens is that slips into the past, that slips into the previous moment. But then again, you think, how dare he say something like that to me? Who does he actually think he is? Why does he actually think he can say that to me? Next time I see him, I'm going to tell him a piece of my mind. And all the time, this is slipping further into the past. You think again, actually, no, I'm meant to be like practicing Dhamma and meditating. I'm meant to be calm and compassionate. I shouldn't be thinking like this. And all this time, this initial thought that you've had, it slipped into the past, but you're still holding on to it. you're still feeding it. You're still feeding it up to the point now. Again, you're only ever experiencing a short window of time in the present, but you're still holding on to that. And that's why we have problems with meditation when we actually try to practice meditation. We think that meditation is about focusing our awareness on the breath in the present moment. And we think if we can do this one thing, that we're going to be okay, that we're doing it right, that we're actually succeeding in meditation. So what obviously happens is we establish our awareness anew in the present, establish it there. But obviously, what happens? The mind wanders off, gets lost in thought. And at this point, we realize, oh, hang on, I'm meant to be meditating. And again, we get critical. But why are we getting critical? Is because we're worried about these points in time that we've missed. We're worried about this point here. We become despondent at this point here. But I'd actually say that instead of thinking, most people think at this point, this is the point where you failed. Most people think when I've realized I'm lost in thought, I've lost all this time, and so this is why I can't meditate. I'd actually say the flip side of that, the alternate to that. This is actually the point that you've succeeded in meditation. This is actually the point where you're doing what you're meant to be doing. The process of meditation is to, wake up from this dreamlike state of being lost in thought and becoming mindful again. So every time that you do that, every time you realize that you've become mindful again, this is what you're actually meant to be doing. This is the skill that you're actually trying to develop. This is the actual thing that you are trying to do when you take on some kind of meditation practice, is to wake up and to start again. And so instead of thinking that this is the point of failure, it's better to think of this point as the point where you're actually succeeding. If you compare it to like developing some kind of physical skill or physical strength, this is the extra push-up that you do. This is the extra lift of the weights. This is the extra run around the track, lap around the track or whatever. This is the point where your mindfulness is getting stronger, because you've been able to realize that you've been lost and you come back again. And so the reason we suffer in our meditation, because of meditation, is because we want the present to be a different way. We want it to be something else that it's not, and we're always judging that by what we've experienced in the past. And so it's much better in meditation to actually just accept the present for what it is and to start again and to begin again anew. And so to think that this point here that we think where we're failing, this is actually the point where you're actually succeeding. And so this isn't something that just happens in meditation. You do a 10-minute meditation and mind runs off and comes back, and then this isn't just something that you're doing for that. This is something, if you're doing a longer meditation, a 30-minute, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of meditation. This is the thing you're doing if you're on a retreat. This is the thing you're doing if you've taken up a meditation practice and you're doing it over months and years. You're doing this same thing. You're trying to establish your mindfulness, begin again in the present. It wanders off. You realize it's wandered off and you start again. This is all you're doing over a long period of time, through the rest of your life. And so this isn't just something that comes about in your meditation. This is what happens in your whole life. This is everything about your life. Just say if you decide, you think that you're like an angry or a critical person, and you snap at people and you think, oh, actually, no, I want to be kinder and more nicer to people, and I want to treat people well. You think, okay, well, I need to be nice to people. And so, the first day after you decide to do that, you try to be nice to people, and it feels weird, and it's like, I feel disingenuous, this is terrible. And, but you struggle against it a little bit, and then all of a sudden you snap at someone. You snap at them again, you berate them, you say something critical to them. And again, it's like this point. You've fallen off. You've fallen down again. And most people at this point say, oh, well, I'm just a nasty person. I'm just a nasty person. I can't change. But again, I'd argue that you've realized that you've fallen off here. So what do? You start again. You try again. You continue to keep trying again, and you just do this over and over in your life. And this happens in every situation in our life. If we trying to keep some kind of ethical conduct, you decide to live your life ethically in one particular way. You fall off. You berate yourself for a little while, but then you come back and you start again. And so this is not something we can just do once in a 5-minute meditation. This is something that goes throughout all aspects of our lives. This is everything in our lives. And so this is something that we just have to continue to do, even though there's sometimes a lot of suffering in it. Sometimes there's the negative aspects of that come up. And so I think it's something we have to continue to do. And so why... I guess maybe that brings up a question of like, well, why would you bother doing that? That just seems so much like it's so much work. It's really hard. It's really hard to like take up a meditation practice or to improve yourself. This is actually really hard work. So why shouldn't I just like let it all go and just, I'll just be nasty. I'll be moody. I'll be grumpy. I'll be I don't care if I never get peace. Like, so I think a good way to explain this is and this may be like, this mightn't be something that you're ever really going to hear a Buddhist monk talk about. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm sort of really into ancient mythology and history and things like that. And one of my favorite things is to read like the Greek myths and Greek stories. And so and also obviously also the Buddhist ones and things like that as well. And so there's a story in ancient Greek mythology about a man named Sisyphus. And most of us might know about Sisyphus, and he's pushing the boulder up the hill. And most of us have an interpretation of, oh, well, this is Sisyphus's punishment. But I've read this story like I don't know how many times, and there's something about it that it actually speaks to something about our own existence, and especially with a practice like meditation, that it exemplifies something. And so maybe you might need a little bit of context for it. So you're going to have to indulge me. I'm going to retell it a little bit, and maybe tell you that some of the parts that you don't know about it. So for anyone that doesn't know, Sisyphus was a king in ancient Greece, in Corinth, and Sisyphus was a man that was crafty and tricky and manipulative, and but also with these kinds of people, it's like, well, they have this kind of intelligence, they have this kind of drive, they have this kind of character about them where they're not willing to just settle for anything, and they're willing to do whatever they can to change that. And so that's, in a way, it's like, while they act terribly, there's something admirable in their actions, in the way that they're going about it. So anyway, through Sisyphus being sort of manipulative and cunning and all these kinds of things, the gods actually deemed Sisyphus that he should die. And so they sent Thanatos down to take Sisyphus down into the underworld. Now, Thanatos is like the lord of death, and the way Thanatos would take people down is he had these like enchanted handcuffs. Put the handcuffs on him. Once you put the handcuffs on, you couldn't get out of them, and Thanatos took you down into the underworld. And but Sisyphus, he wasn't going to fall for that straight away. So Sisyphus actually tricked Thanatos into putting the handcuffs on himself, and he tricked him into that. But not only that, he kicked him and threw him into a cupboard, and so. Sisyphus already just once, he cheated death. He cheated death, and he'd gone against the will of the gods. But obviously he's just thrown the Lord of Death is just like locked in his like clothes hamper kind of thing. He realizes, okay, that's not going to last long. I'm going to have to do something about that. So Sisyphus goes to his wife and says to his wife loved him a lot, and said, I'm going to die soon. So any of the funeral rites and the offerings to the gods and the funeral libations, don't make any of those when I die. Just throw me out into the street. And she was horrified by that, but he made a promise to do that. And so she promised to do that. Anyway, a few days passed. The Lord of Death is still locked in the cupboard, and so all the Greek gods, they get together, where's the Lord of Death? They find where he is, they let him out, and obviously now it's time for Sisyphus to go. And so they're like, and Sisyphus, he complies this time. Okay, Thanatos, put me in the handcuffs, take me down. Of course I can't trick you again. And Thanatos takes Sisyphus down into the underworld. Now, just quickly with the underworld in ancient Greek mythology, it's not exactly like say for example like a Buddhist conception where there's different realms. The underworld in Greek mythology, it's all one place, but there's different areas. There's different areas of it where maybe more pious people go, or more not so pious people go. But anyway. So Thanatos took Sisyphus down and got him to the river Styx, which was like the entrance to get through. But because Sisyphus's wife hadn't done any of the libations towards the gods, he didn't have the money to get in and cross on the boat. So they threw him into the river. And he had to swim across the river Styx into the underworld. And so when he got out, the river Styx is terrible and dark and cold and all these kinds of things, but he was all mangled up and ripped up because his shade was all mangled up and ripped up because his wife had thrown him out into the street. And so he's all ripped up, but he goes to Persephone, who is the queen of the underworld, and Persephone and Hades were the king and the queen of the underworld. And Persephone was, obviously appalled. What's this mangly guy doing in front of me? And Sisyphus pleaded with Persephone. He said, the reason I look like this is because my wife is such a mean and terrible woman. And that she, as I was dying, I heard her say, I'm so glad that I'm rid of him. He's the worst husband ever. There's no need for us to make any libations to the gods. There's no need for me to make any offerings to Persephone or to Hades. She hated me so much, and she doesn't like the gods. This obviously, it enraged Persephone. She's like, well, your wife has to be punished. And he's like, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. But you know what the best way to punish her would be? And she's like, oh, what? If you sent me back up there with her and I had to stay with her, this would enrage her. She hates me so much that would enrage her so much. But not just that I was younger and stronger again and I could live a long, long life with her. That'd be the most suffering that she could ever imagine. And so Persephone is like, that's a great idea, and sent him back there. And obviously again, Sisyphus has cheated death, and he's tricked the gods. He's gone against the gods. He's outsmarted the gods. And so Sisyphus leads another long and very prosperous life. And obviously he gets to the end of it. There has to be a time where he's going to die again now. So he's led another 50 or 60 years. And all the gods in Mount Olympus got together and said, right, we've got to get him down into the underworld this time. We can't mess this up again. So they sent Hermes down. Now Hermes was like the trickster god. He was really intelligent, crafty, all these kinds of things. So if anybody was a match for Sisyphus, it was Hermes. And Hermes was, very quick-witted and was able to, trick people in many ways. So they got Hermes to take Sisyphus down into the underworld, and Hermes took him down and sort of stroked his ego a little bit. He's like, oh, Sisyphus, you're somebody after my own heart. You're really, you've tricked the gods so many times. This is really admirable. So what the gods have decided is that you can actually spend your underworld existence in a place called Elysium, which was the nice part of the underworld. And that's where all the the pious and good and boring people go to spend eternity. And Sisyphus was like, oh, that's not going to be any fun. Why would I do that? So Hermes said to him, he's like, well, there's another option, but you have to pass a test. And Sisyphus was like, okay, well, what's that? He's like, we can give you immortality, just like the gods. We can give you immortality, but not just immortality, but immortality among humans. And so you can be a king. And actually, this is what all the Greek gods in the pantheon, that's what they all wanted. They wanted immortality, but they wanted to be among humans. So Hermes offered this to him. He's like, this is the highest thing that you can ever possibly get. And obviously Sisyphus is like, yeah, that's great. Well, what do I have to do? And Hermes said to him, well, it's not that hard. You just have to push this boulder up the hill. If you can get that boulder up the hill, then you'll have immortality. And not just immortality, but the highest kind of immortality. And he said, but the only catch about this is you have to keep trying to push it up there. You can't stop until you actually get it up the top. And so Sisyphus was like, yeah, okay, well, it's a big boulder. It's not too big of a hill. I think I can do that. Started to push it up, pushing it all the way up. Got it almost all the way up there. But now you probably know the story. This is the part where Hermes tricked him. And the boulder was actually enchanted. And so as soon as he got it up near the top, it'd just roll back down. And so Sisyphus has to come back down and push it back up again. And it gets near the top, rolls back down, has to go back up again. And so they say that Sisyphus is still in Tartarus at this time, actually pushing the rock up. And so most of us look at that story and go, okay, well, that's Sisyphus's punishment. This is Sisyphus's punishment for, trying to go against fate. This is Sisyphus's punishment for trying to outwit the gods or to be living with hubris. But for me, there's something else about this story that I don't think it's just as simple as that. There's something about this story that speaks to when you take on a meditation practice, or when you take on you could say, like, the highest goal of Buddhism. The highest goal of Buddhism is for us to become enlightened and to strive towards the highest thing in life, to Nibbana. This is something that, this is what we all come into this for. The highest thing, we want to get above, want to go beyond the cycle of birth and death. So just like Sisyphus, who wanted not just a normal, like good existence in Elysium. He didn't just want to settle for something like comfortable. Like, it's the same with us. We don't want to just settle for something. We don't want to just go out to the cafe in the morning and have brunch and do all these things. It's like, we don't want to settle for something like that. That's that easy. We don't just want to sit at home and watch Netflix or whatever. We've decided we want to go for something higher. We don't just want this base kind of pleasure. And so the way we do that is by undertaking some kind of practice. We have to take up some kind of burden to do that. Just like Sisyphus. Sisyphus wanted immortality among humans, but he had to take up a burden to actually do that. And it's a seemingly impossible burden. It's seemingly something where he has to continue just to start again. And it's like us with our meditation. We want enlightenment. We want peace, calm, clarity, understanding. We want these joyous states of minds. We want understanding into the nature of existence. But to do that, we have to take up this kind of practice. We have to take up this practice that seems like, at times it seems like a punishment. At times it seems like it's laborious. At times it seems like you're not really getting anywhere. At times it seems like you're getting somewhere. You're almost at the top. You're almost there, and then it all falls away. And you just have to start again. And that just keeps happening and keeps happening. So you might think, well, again, like, why would I do something like that? That just seems ridiculous. Like, why would I do something that's seemingly impossible? that's seemingly, meaningless, and it's absurd. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Well, it's because you know that there's something higher there from that. You know that there's something more beyond just the simple suffering that you have to go through to actually do it. You know it's something, you're working towards something higher. There's an interpretation of the myth of Sisyphus by a French philosopher called Albert Camus, and he said that he used the myth of Sisyphus to outline the absurdity and the meaninglessness of life, where you're just in like a cycle kind of thing. But his argument at the end is like, we shouldn't see Sisyphus as somebody that's spiteful or despondent because he has to take up this burden. We should see Sisyphus as somebody that has found meaning in this thing that he's doing. He's found meaning in something and trying to move towards the highest level. And this is the same with us, with our meditation practice. Although it might seem laborious, although it might seem like you encounter obstacles, although it might seem like you're not making progress, although it might seem like all these problems are there, we have to keep going because we know it's going to actually lead to something. And so I think thinking about that these are the things that will keep us going, because there are these obviously there are the positive aspects to meditation. And that positive aspect is finally leading us to enlightenment. So every time that we fall off and we have to start again, you're getting one step closer to enlightenment. You're getting one step closer to calm. You're getting one step closer to wisdom, because you're able to let go of the past and just to start again and to keep going again. And the more you do this, the closer and closer you'll actually get to the actual goal that you're trying to get to with meditation. So maybe that's enough of me rambling on about Greek myths and all these kinds of things. So hopefully anything I've said this morning has hopefully been beneficial in some way. Hopefully you're able to take something out of it that's good. And if not, well, if there's something that you didn't understand or you want to ask me about, probably now's a good time to ask some questions. So, yeah.
Would anyone like to come up to the microphone before we take online questions?
Yeah.
Morning, Bhante.
Morning.
My question is about meditation.
Yes.
I find it very difficult. How about with chanting behind or music or something like that? Will that help?
Yeah, so the question is, obviously meditation can be difficult. Can we use other tools as well, like chanting or a talk behind or something to help with the meditation? And yeah, totally. It's you have to really find what works for you. Like there's many different ways to actually meditate. So if you find that listening to chanting when you're sitting meditation or walking or something like that, that this helps focus your mind, then it's the right thing to do. Some people like doing that, and if it works for you, yeah, you should do it. Other people, maybe it doesn't work for them, so there's no need for them to actually do it. But if you actually do this and it helps you with your meditation, keeps you focused, helps make you more aware of the present, and that's the right thing to do. So you can, for sure you can do it. A lot of my teacher Ajahn, he actually recommends doing things like that. Say for example, if the mind won't settle down or that we're thinking a lot, he recommends that actually one thing you can do is do chanting at that time. If the mind is too agitated, you can either do external chanting, you chant out loud, or maybe you can just chant internally. So you go over one of the chants and just go over and over and over and over it, or as you said, listen to it or something. The more you do that, and the more you'll be able to in a way, rein your mind in a little bit more. So yeah, it's more than fine to do that. Many monks, will listen to talks as a form of meditation. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that at all.
Okay, thank you, Bante.
About the suffering you first talked about during the meditation, and also the suffering of the Greek mythological chap who tried to liberate by doing task suffering. Now, first about the meditation. Now, when you embark on meditation as a new meditator, you may have got the instructions from the teacher. Your mind is always going all over the place. You may not be aware of that. Mind is running around. And when you try to concentrate on your breath or whatever, when you slow it down, that is the time you realize that things are moving. Because at normal times, it's moving so fast into every direction, you even don't know there's a mind. But when you try to concentrate, you know that where it's going. But the meditation teacher says, don't worry about that. You can bring it back, and that's okay. That's normal. So you won't get frustrated. But also the advantage is that now you know that because you are getting some concentration only, that you are mindful of this moment. So you are now getting mindful. You are getting somewhere. Don't you worry. That is, after all, meditation is all about trying to train your mind to be mindful. So they are achieving. So if you go by that principle, I think there is no need to be frustrated at all. So that is, you're doing something, achieving, and eventually you will practice well enough to be able to concentrate and be mindful all the time. So suffering is not, frustration won't be that much. Then the other chap, the Greek mythological character, he tried to liberate himself by doing the hard task of rolling up a boulder up the hill. But the Buddhist practice, there are other ways of liberating yourself. You can't be thinking of dukkha, 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 and try to do all the, like the Hindus do. They try to walk on fire and have nails put in the tongue and body and swing and all that. That's a Hindu way of doing it. Suffer and kill all my sins till I get liberated. Buddha has a different approach.
Sorry?
Buddha had a different approach. He mentioned dukkha is a fact of life. But you can liberate by developing your mind to understand that there is no personality there to be liberated. So on that route, you can go through in a different way, not with so much of hardship. That's my comment.
Yeah, like with something, say for example, with Sisyphus, it's not about that, he's trying to do something that is causing him suffering, so he can get to the cessation of suffering. It's just that it's a part of it, that the task that you're actually doing is a part of the suffering that you're actually going through is a part of the task. So with something like meditation, you're obviously that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to realize suffering and see it for what it is, and you're trying to develop the mind. You're trying to start to get calm in the mind, and this is obviously what you're doing. But there's also within that, there's also suffering that comes about through it as well. Like, I'm sitting here for a while now. I'm starting to get pains in my leg. There's some kind of suffering there. So it's more not about putting yourself. It's not about putting yourself in suffering so you can go beyond suffering. It's about knowing that the task that you will undertake involves some suffering, and that this is a very normal thing to happen. Because, as I said before, most people think meditation is about feeling better, becoming calm, all these kinds of things, and a lot of the time they don't realize that there are difficulties there. There's difficulties in your meditation practice, and just to know that it's very normal for that to happen. There are going to be difficulties in it. It's not this kind of, not this sort of like sitting there and birds are going to be landing on your shoulders, and it's like a Disney cartoon or something, and you're happy, and like it's not always just like that there is some kind of suffering involved there. So you don't want to go that other way of pushing yourself so hard that you're just suffering because of it. You have to know your limitations. You don't want to be doing something where you're just pushing yourself into suffering to try to get over suffering, but just more accepting that suffering is a part of the process.
Morning.
Morning.
Just curious what the role of prayer plays in Buddhist meditation. The reason I ask is because, like, I was raised a Catholic, so from the Catholic perspective, prayer was a very simple concept. So, like, you're having a spiritual relationship with Jesus Christ. You know, so it's a very simple concept for a kid to understand. With Buddhism, you know, since I've taken refuge, I've because of that, I think I've had some confusion about the role of prayer in Buddhism because, you know, as I understand it, the Buddha left existence, I suppose. So, like, what would I be having a relationship with in prayer? Like, what's the role of prayer in meditation?
So how would you define prayer of what you're conceiving it of now from a Buddhist perspective?
So I guess the way that I'm conceiving of prayer is that it's something that it's some sort of way of like forming a relationship with or communicating with some sort of higher power. But in you know, since I became a Buddhist, there's not really that concept for me, I suppose, in this religion. So I don't quite understand the role of prayer in Buddhism, I guess, just because of my childhood context.
So, I think there's a few ways to answer this, and there's a few different steps along the way to actually answer this. So, overall, and probably what has confused you so far about this is one of the things that the Buddha talked about is that you can't, you know, any kind of refuge that you take on externally is, you know, that's not going to be the cause for you to become liberated. This is something that you have to strive towards yourself. You can't go for, you can't rely on another being to become liberated for you. This is something that you have to work for yourself. And so that can bring up the thought of like, oh, well, there's nothing for me to hold on to. There's nothing for me to, you know, strive towards. So for a Buddhist, we have the idea that, well, what we're striving towards, what we're trying to unify ourselves with in some way is nibbana, is enlightenment. But that's an abstract concept. It's like, well, okay, what's nibbana? I don't get it. It's like, is it a place? Is it a mind state? There's all these kinds of things. So for a Buddhist, it can take a while for you to gain faith in that concept of nibbana. And that is something that comes through the practice, and when you start to, you know, develop some calm and wisdom in the mind, it's like, okay, well, there's this thing that I know that I'm moving towards. So it becomes a little bit more solid. Now, so that's the overarching thing that we're going for. And if we're going to have some kind of prayer in that way, it's like, well, that's the ideal that we're moving towards, the ideal mental state that we're trying to develop. But you can't like pray for that. You can't go, oh, yeah, I hope that this is going to happen, and you know, please, if I do all the right things, will I please get nibbana? It's like, it's not going to obviously work like that. So there are these other aspects where we say, for example, we did the chanting before, and we're recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, the qualities of the Dhamma, the qualities of the Sangha. And so this is what we say we can use as a kind of refuge and a kind of recollection. So we're not necessarily asking the Buddha, the Dhamma, or the Sangha to, you know, help us in these things, but inadvertently we are, in that, well, the Dhamma is the thing, the teachings are the thing that can give me insight and clarity in my life. So in a way, I'm revering that. I'm asking that for help. I'm asking the Dhamma for help in the way to live my life. I get confused about teachings and all these kinds of things. So I go and ask the Sangha about my points of confusion. And the Buddha is somebody that you're actually achieved this thing that I think I'm after. So I revere that in some way. So in a way, you do have that kind of reverence and that communication with these three aspects. But it's not, it's not like prayer in the traditional sense. So that's the second way that you can have the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and it's like a form of prayer, but you're relying on them. You're more going to refuge with them. The third way to think about prayer in terms of a Buddhist in a Buddhist conception is that because you're not trying to get some kind of unification with an externalized being at the end of this. What you're trying to do is to develop that state of nibbana. You're trying to get towards that. So to get to that, you need to go inside to actually realize that. This is not something that can be given to you from outside. This is something you have to realize within yourself. So in a way, you have to be in constant communion with yourself. Yourself, you are your own refuge. That's what the Buddha actually said, that you make yourself your own refuge. And so you're in this constant flux of being in communion with your own self and asking yourself for help. Why am I angry now? What's actually happening here? Why is this thing out in the world? Why has that happened to me? And why am I reacting in this way? So in that way, you're trying to figure that out as well through a form of prayer. You could say it's a loose definition of prayer, but you're really trying to go to refuge and take refuge in the Dhamma, that this will be the way for you to understand this. And this Dhamma is something that will arise within your own mind. And so you have to rely on yourself and you have to commune with yourself to understand this and understand why you're suffering and understand why bad things are happening, or understand why you're so fortunate, why you're so blessed. So the prayer in this third sense, it's a prayer to yourself, and it's a prayer within yourself towards understanding your own psyche. So there are these different aspects where we can say, well, this you're performing some kind of prayer, but it's not the prayer in the traditional sense that you were brought up with, that it's an externalized thing that can help you. The prayers always really come back to you developing these qualities within yourself and trying to, instead of asking for them to come from outside, to work out how to develop them from inside.
So it's kind of like asking for inspiration to become more like the ideal, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Very much.
Yeah. Hey.
If meditation and the point of it is to sort of be in the present and not think about the past and the future, where does gratefulness and gratitude come into that?
Well, it's one thing to say meditation is just about being in the present, and but that's it's pretty hard to do that all the time. So it's not. Well, that's a pretty common conceptualization of what meditation is, and that's basically just what I railed on about for 40 minutes or whatever it was. It's not the only part of it. It's what you're aiming towards, but it's not the only part of it. You do have to develop wholesome states of mind as well. Try to actively develop wholesome states of mind as well. So it's just being in the present is just one facet of it, but it's, as I said, it's hard to do that all the time. So the times where you are a little bit more overactive, that is a good time to be actively trying to develop things like gratitude and forgiveness and all these things. So it's not like if we're just always just in the present that this is the thing that we're exactly going for. We still do have to develop those kinds of qualities. You still have to interact in the world. You still have to interact with other people. You still have to move throughout the world. You're going to get lost in thought times, so you're going to have to come up against different things. So you do have to have many different tools in your toolkit to actually deal with that. And just being in the present moment is one of them. It's the central one. It's the main thing you want, but you also do need these other things as well to deal with it. So one thing, an extra thing to say on top of that is we trying to develop wholesome qualities in the mind, like, as you said, like gratitude. Now, one can be imbued with gratitude and have gratitude and develop gratitude and still be in the present moment with that. So you can be grateful, but not, you can be grateful and really sink into that experience in the present moment. Really, make that, imbue that quality within the present moment and really actually experience it and feel it. Because say, for example, you might think, oh, I should be, somebody does something nice to me. Oh, I should be grateful to them. They've done this nice thing for me. So, I should, pay them back in some way. And we just reflexively go, oh, thanks, or we give them a present or something. But can sometimes be superficial, the gratefulness that we actually have to people. But if we're developing gratitude in that sense and really being in the present moment and really sort of like sinking into it, it's like the way that you're grateful towards another person, it has more meaning.
Does that, just to understand that, let's just say if you're grateful for the past and you're being in the past,
Yep.
you're more saying that you get to experience it in the present, you experience that gratefulness of a past instance now, and that's that's being in the present still?
Yeah. You can still do that. Like, say, for example, you're very grateful for somebody that helped you in the past and recollecting that. You're still in the present recollecting this person that helped you in the past, and you're still really grateful for that. And that is the experience that you're having in the present. While you're thinking about it's sort of a bit of an oxymoron, but it's like you can still be doing that. You can still be thinking of the past. You can still have that image of the past in the mind, in the present, and be aware of that in the present, and be grateful for that in the present, and to think, well, this is this thing that happened to me. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for this person that helped me. But you're still in the present. You're not just just sort of like lost in thought with it. So, it can be hard to explain sometimes. But did that make sense? Or
It did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. I confuse myself sometimes when the more I speak, the more I confuse myself.
Ajahn, we have 3 online questions. So the first one is there a difference between desiring something like enlightenment and the desire that is a hindrance in the path?
Yeah, for sure. To move towards enlightenment, one does need to put in some form of effort, and one does need to have some form of drive to actually do that, like the story, to take up this burdensome thing that you're going to do with meditation, and to take that up to move towards enlightenment. So there does need to be some kind of desire there to do that. And you'd say that that's a wholesome desire that's moving, just in general, that's moving you in the right direction. But say, for example, you have a different kind of desire, like the desire to, like eat ice cream and watch Netflix or something. Like that kind of desire, it's not really improving your life in any way. So, but people still might follow it. So you have to work out what are the kinds of desires that are going to help improve you, and what are the kinds of desires that are going to be detrimental to you. And we do, to an extent, have to follow some of those more wholesome desires, and we have to put forth some kind of effort to move towards these more wholesome states and move towards the more wholesome states of enlightenment. And it's a skillful means for us to move forward, but it doesn't mean that we should be overly obsessed with okay, I have to get enlightened. I have to become, I have to, I have to do this. I have to do this like really quick. This is everything for me. This is the only thing I have to do. If you're doing something like that, that can be counterproductive. That can, in a way, just be pulling you in the wrong direction. So one has to have the desire to move towards enlightenment and to actually really improve oneself in some way, and know that this is a wholesome desire and act upon that, but not be too caught up in the desire to actually do that thing, but more actually use the desire to move one in that direction. And those kinds of desires that are not so wholesome and pushing you off the path, they're the ones you have to try to let go of and not to engage in. Does that make sense? Yep.
Thank you, Ajahn. Second question here is Anapana meditation the best one to attain higher jhanas?
I don't know. I don't know. It depends. It's, for one person it might be. For the next person it might not be. It's again, I've sort of harped on about this a fair bit, but it really is about the individual and what works for the individual. If you feel that Anapana is a practice, so Anapana is just watching the breath, mindfulness of breathing. If you feel Anapana makes the mind calm and you have experience with it actually working, then keep at it. Keep at it and keep trying to develop it more and more until you can actually get to these points of the jhanas. But say, for example, maybe Anapana isn't like a suitable practice for another person. They might, I've talked to many people that feel like when they watch the breath, they feel like agitated, or they feel a sense of claustrophobia or anxiety when they're like dropping away all their senses and actually just focusing on this one thing. So for somebody like that would mean that Anapana isn't the best thing for them to actually get the jhanas, because all it's actually doing is making them more neurotic and agitated. So it really depends on the individual and how well they practice. But obviously the Buddha did recommend it as a good technique to actually achieve the jhanas eventually. So it is something that can work, but it just really depends on the individual whether they actually can make it work. So if it's working for you, like, keep doing it. Like, it's I don't know if it's going to get you the jhanas, but just if it's working so far, just keep at it. So.
Thank you, Ajahn. I have a question myself. I started my meditation techniques from the Goenka, Vipassana style meditation.
That's the meditation retreat I ran away from.
And I actually, I didn't quite run away, but I certainly did want to run away. It was.
I came back, by the way. I forgot to have that part of the story. I did come back, so go on.
But one of the difficulties I experienced is actually there was a lot of difficulties during the retreat with anxiety coming up and just panic attacks coming up. But after I finished the retreat, I found that in certain business situations where I'm giving a presentation or whatever, previous to that, there's a level of nervousness before you start your presentation. But I found that after I'd done the Goenka retreat, I can go into full-blown panic attacks, right? So this become really, really sensitive, extraordinarily sensitive to certain sensations in my body. I mean, I still, it's not like I've got over it, but it's still there. It can happen. But I've found that not trying to fix it, because once I try to fix it, I go into it just spirals completely out of control. But it's one of the difficulties that I've experienced out of meditation. It's not so much in the meditation, it's just off the cushion.
And that's and that's where one has to develop a balance there, because for some people, like doing intense 10-day retreat kind of thing, and then or a particular kind of technique that you might be using. So and I'm not saying the Goenka technique does this for everyone, but maybe there's a particular kind of technique where you're looking at your bodily signals, your sensations in your body, and what you're doing is you become hyper aware of that. And so if panic starts to come up and you're taught just to pay attention to the sensations, you're giving that more attention, and it's actually it can actually ramp the whole thing up. So obviously the objective of that practice is to observe the sensations and to just let them arise and pass away. But for some people, it can make them worse. It can, as I said, you have this hyper sense of solipsistic experience where all that is happening is the sensations, and you're paying more attention, and they just worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So if you find something like that is happening, that's when you go, okay, well, maybe that kind of practice isn't right for me. Maybe I should try a different kind of practice. And then, maybe later, if you've got some more experience, maybe you could come back to that. Okay, it's still not working. I still feel this way. Okay, switch back to the other practice. Eventually, hopefully, it can get to the point where you can do any kind of meditation and you get good results from it. But that's not always the case. So this is why we have to find the right kind of meditation for us specifically. And yeah, anybody that says that the kind of meditation that they're teaching, this is the one and only way to enlightenment, and this is exactly the way, and if you don't do this way, then you won't get enlightened. You should run from those people, because that's worrying. Everybody is different, and you just have to know exactly what works for you. And if something is if a particular kind of meditation is causing you more suffering, back off from it. I know, for example, there was a monk in Thailand, Lumpur Panya. He was a very senior Western monk, and he lived at a place called Wat Pa Bantad in Thailand with Lung Tamahabua. And Lung Tamahabua is very fierce, he teaches just investigate the body. Investigate the body as something that's not inherently beautiful, and he really, Lung Tamahabua really pushes these kinds of practices. And Lumpur Panya was one of the, as I said, very senior Western monk, and he'd actually say, well, sometimes doing these specific kinds of practices can actually bring about really negative mind states. If you're just thinking about how loathsome the body is all the time, that can actually bring about a lot of negative mind states. So you have to balance that with something else, with a practice, say, for example, of loving kindness. So it's not just that you have one technique and this is the one and only way and this is the one and only thing. Sometimes you have to balance it, because it might be bringing about certain kind of negative consequences. Other side of that is, if you're doing something like Anapanasati, you're becoming very, very calm, you're very peaceful, and you're able to stay in peace for a very long period of time. This is a good thing. I'll get that on the table first. This is a good thing. But that also can be a hindrance as well. If you just stay in calm states and don't investigate, then your practice isn't going to progress very well. So we always have to be balancing ourselves out. Knowing whatever practice we're doing, we might need to be developing something else. It could be we might need to develop something else because we're falling into some kind of negativity, or we need to develop something else because we're going positive in a particular kind of way, but that positivity is getting us stuck and complacent in some way. So yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn. There is one last question here. If I can find it. Oh yeah, how can we ask someone to forgive our actions and be at peace?
It depends what you've done. Humility. Humility, and really having humility that you really have done the wrong thing, and really opening up to that and being very vulnerable in that situation of, well, yeah, I did the wrong thing. Could you please forgive me? If you are just doing that in like a superficial way of like, oh, come on, forgive me, it's in the past, let's move past it. Like potentially this person might be, see through the superficiality of that. And so if we do want to ask for forgiveness from someone, we actually really have to be humble, and we really have to be willing to open ourselves enough to let people know that we're sorry for what we've actually done, that we're regretful for what we've done, that we've seen the error of our ways. And whether this person does immediately forgive us, that's out of your control. You can't control the way that they're going to react. The only thing you can control is the way you yourself are setting up your own mind and the way that you're approaching asking for forgiveness. If you do that in the right way and you're continually trying to work for it, even though this person maybe doesn't forgive you initially, and you keep working on it again, begin again, start again, try again, keep developing that mind state, eventually, hopefully this person will forgive you in the end. But it really does start with the way that you're trying to do it. If you just try to do it in this way of come on, it's in the past, let's get over it. Come on, don't stop being so stupid. Don't hold on to the past. That's going to annoy the person, obviously. So we are the ones that really actually need to make the change. We're the ones that really need to be humble and realize that we've been at fault, and to take responsibility for that. And if we can take responsibility for that, this other person, they mightn't get it right away, but eventually they'll see that you are remorseful for your actions. You've taken responsibility for them, and eventually, hopefully, that they will forgive you. But even if they don't, even if this person doesn't actually forgive you, that's not something that you should be concerned about. What you should be concerned about is correcting your own behavior and owning your own behavior and being responsible for your own behavior and being remorseful for any behavior that actually impacted somebody in that way, because that's the only way that you as the individual are going to grow from that. If you don't have that, then the asking for forgiveness means nothing. Any other last questions? We've got a few minutes left. You can just sing them out. You don't have to come up to the microphone. I can repeat it if you don't feel like coming up to the mic.
Thank you, Ajahn. That was a very nice
Yep. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Compliments always good. Yeah, as I said, hopefully anything I say, hopefully you get something out of it. I ramble a lot, so there's plenty of times I say things and it's like, that doesn't make sense. That's he's contradicting himself. That's sort of that's a part of it. And I speaking of forgiveness, I ask for forgiveness of all of you if I say something that's like, oh, that's wrong. That doesn't make sense. So it's that's really what actually that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, as I was saying in the talk, you do something, you think it's right, and maybe it falls. And you make mistakes and you have to start again. So it's not like my talks are infallible founts of pure knowledge and wisdom that there's nothing wrong with them. It's like, oh, I say things that are wrong sometimes. Like it's, I forget so many things. I do ask for all your forgiveness if I say anything. It's like, hey, that's wrong. Like it's fine. If you think it's wrong, it's cool. We can discuss about it and ask about it. So, yeah. So, don't take what I say as the only way to understand something. There's plenty other ways to understand these things. So, yeah. But I'm glad you like to talk anyway. So it's good.
I think I got one more question.
Okay. I think I got some time. Yep.
Regards to meditation,
Yep.
sometimes I'm a bit concerned.
You okay?
A bit. Sometimes I'm a bit concerned. Is when I do meditation. At times I see some friends, and they fall asleep at snoring.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I do that too.
Yeah.
I feel very guilty.
Yeah.
So
I've fallen asleep so many times in meditation. I can't even count how many times I've fallen asleep. I've sort of, all of a sudden, sit meditation, then I was like, I'm going to stay awake all night. This is going to be great. And then all of a sudden, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're lying on the floor. And it's, how did I get here? So don't worry about it too much. It's something normal. It's something that happens. You try to, if you feel like you're getting tired, you try to correct it. You try to, sit up a bit straighter, try to re-establish mindfulness again. But if you fall asleep, you fall asleep. That's just the way it is. And you look around, and it's one of the funny things when you're on like a retreat. Everybody's sitting there, it's quiet, and everyone's peaceful, and someone starts snoring next to you. He's falling asleep. It's fine. It happens to people. So,
but
it's
very embarrassing. Though.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It doesn't matter. You're asleep. You can't be embarrassed. You're asleep. It doesn't matter. You're not going to know. You're not going to know that you're asleep. So it's only other people that know. So there's no need to be embarrassed. And yeah. So. Yeah, there's so many people that fall asleep in meditation. I've got some horror stories, but I won't tell them now. It's of people falling asleep in meditation. It's always fun. Just see it as okay. I'm a human. I have to sleep. Sometimes you're a bit tired. Sometimes you try and you've had a big day. You're tired. You sort of fall asleep. That's just the way it is. But just you try again. And as I said before, you begin again. You start again. If you've fallen asleep, it's okay. Okay, I've woken up. Okay, I try again. And again. Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah. So it's like that in meditation. You fall asleep, wake up, try again. Fall asleep, wake up, try again. And it's like with your mind, when your mind wanders off. When your mind wanders off, it's like you've gone to sleep anyway. So and when you finally wake up again, you have to just start again. So don't worry about it too much. If you can find a way to overcome it, good. If not, it's good. You get a bit of a nap as well. So. Done about that? Yep. So, 10:30. Probably that's probably about the time that we'll wrap it up for now. Any more announcements or anything that need to be made? No.
Please feel free to join us for the lunch jhana.
Yep. So I guess there's. Yeah, so you're more than welcome. We have a communal lunch over there at about 11 o'clock, so you're more than welcome to come. But just before we go, we'll pay respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and we'll just officially finish it off. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Soakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami. Okay, very good.